Good afternoon. This is wildlife biologist Eric Orff with my New Hampshire Fishing Wildlife YouTube. This is Monday, September 30th, 2019. Today, the New Hampshire Fishing Game Department wildlife biologists are stalking pheasants like they always do the 2 days prior to the opening day, which has been October 1st as far back as I can remember. So October 1st is the beginning of bird season, including pheasants and grouse and woodcock. And a friend of mine dropped off recently it's a biennial report that the Fishing Game Department has done for decades. This one happens to be 1930. So when I was employed by the New Hampshire Fishing Game Department as a wildlife biologist, I remember every 2 years we had to help put together this biennial report, which is a report of what the agency has done the previous 2 years. And in this report, dated 1930, I'm reflecting on pheasants. It said during the year 1928-1929, 6,015 pheasant eggs were distributed and 341 live pheasants. The following year, the second year of the biennium, 3,885 eggs were distributed and 449 pheasants. But here is a note. The results, the eggs were distributed throughout the state to be hatched under hens and in incubators. The results were a failure, almost without exception, which clearly shows that individuals, perhaps who are familiar with poultry, cannot raise pheasants successfully. This is a report from then the Game Farm Superintendent E. Eames. Now, I remember the pheasant farm from in the late 1960s. After I got my driver's license in 1966, I went over to visit the New Hampshire Fishing Game Department's game farm in Brentwood. Walt Stevens was the superintendent when I first went over, because I happened to be raising pheasants for the Londonderry Fishing Game Club for our annual field trial. So each year the Fishing Game Club would get some pheasant chicks. I didn't hatch them, as I recall. We got some chicks, and I would raise them in the barn at my folks' home, about 100 a year for the annual field trial. And so I have done that for many years. So I was very interested in raising pheasants. So I went over to the pheasant farm, which was active until the early 80s, when there was an outbreak of Triple E, and then Governor Mel Thompson ordered all the pheasants at the farm to be killed, and no fishing game no longer raised pheasants, and since then they have been purchased. And this year, guess what? The pheasants have been stalked the last 2 days. About a quarter of 11,518 pheasants that were purchased for this year's hunting season. So if you are a pheasant hunter, you will need to purchase a pheasant hunting license. I think it's $20 or $25. It's gone up considerably over the years because pheasant prices have gone up. So now the Fishing Game Department buys the pheasants from different distributors over the years, and this year they will be buying 11,518. They'll be stocked at 63 sites throughout the state, all the way up to the northern Coos County, in 44 different towns, including right here in Epsom. And I certainly stocked pheasants for many, many years during my 31-year career with Fishing Game. Each year I would be tasked, as all the wildlife biologists are, to meet at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the pheasant truck would arrive with all these crates about this big, and we would load them onto our pickup trucks and then head off to our chosen sites where we were to release them. And one of the things I like to do when I arrived at the site, especially when the season was underway, I would pull in. If there were hunters there, I would call out to them, come on over and put your gun over there, and help me release them. So I never felt threatened by any of the hunters, and I certainly worked with them. Nowadays, you cannot hunt for pheasants until noon on the days that they're stalked, so that the pheasants can be released and they can kind of spread out before the hunters are allowed to take them. So pheasant season starts October 1st, tomorrow, and there will be over 11,000 birds released, including almost a quarter of them that were released yesterday and today. So plenty of birds for our hunters, and I think I have read where maybe a half or a little bit more are taken by the hunters, and a lot of them. I'm a mile or more from the pheasant stocking site here, and I'll end up with some birds in my yard this fall. Almost every year I do, so they spread out. Not all of them are taken by hunters. One year as I released them, I remembered a pheasant flew down the field and a big red-tailed hawk tried to get the pheasant, and it landed right in front of the pheasant, and they were kind of faced off for about 5 or 10 minutes. The hawk would fly up and the pheasant would puff up, and the hawk never did get the pheasant. But you see some interesting things while it's stalking pheasants. The leaves change from beginning to change till by late October, when the last stockings have occurred. The trees are actually shedding their leaves. So it was always good duty to stalk pheasants, and I hope all the pheasant hunters enjoy their opening day tomorrow and get out there and enjoy New Hampshire's pheasant hunting.